Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video. And the subject of today's video is going to be on Survivor. I'm going back to doing a couple of Survivor vids here, starting off with my beginner's guide to navigating watching Survivor. So, Survivor is a robust show. They've had 40 seasons, most all of which, I think 35 of which or 34 of which, are available to watch on Hulu or Prime Video, I think if you have that. So yeah, there's a lot of options, and I think it's a show where you don't necessarily want to start at season one and just go all the way through, because there's a lot of bad seasons mixed in with good seasons on this show, and I think knowing the good from the bad is really um, impactful as to whether you stick with the show or not, or whether you really get the most out of the show, because you can watch 10 seasons of it and not really like it all that well, but it's maybe just because you're watching the wrong 10 seasons out of the 40. So without further ado, I'm going to give some recommendations as far as seasons to avoid early on, and then also seasons that I would recommend watching early on based on my experience. I've seen all but I think 5 seasons, which include seasons I actually know the winners and all that from every season just because I've done a lot of research, and unfortunately it's gotten spoiled for me, but I've seen everything but seasons 2, uh 5, 6, 7, 8. So I've seen everything but those 5, 6, 7, 8. Everything but those 5. Yep. So first off, seasons to avoid. I generally say, as a rule of thumb, it's good to avoid seasons with returning players if you're just starting watching, just because I think those seasons are really generally meant to benefit people who have seen the returning players play before. So that includes season 8, which is an all-star season. Let's see here. Season 11 features some returning people in Guatemala. Um, Season 16 features returning people in Micronesia, fans versus favorites. Season 20 features returning people in Heroes versus Villains. Season 22 features Boston Rob and Russell returning in Redemption Island. 23 features Ozzy and Coach returning. 25 features a different Russell Swan, along with Michael Skupin returning, and um, Jonathan Penner. So season 25. Let's see here. 27 is Blood versus Water with returning players, and then season 31 and 34 are like all-star seasons, second chance, and then game changers. And then season 40 is all winners, so try not to watch that either if you're just starting the show, because that'll spoil like half of the previous seasons for you. So those are all the seasons with returning players to run through again really quickly in case you missed any of them. 8, 11, 16, 20, 22, 23, 25, 27. Oh, 26 is fans versus favorites again, so skip that one as well. Um, and then I would say 31 and 34 and 40. So there's a lot of seasons with returning players, and those are great seasons once you've seen the previous seasons with those returning players, because I think it lends a lot of context to what's going on. Um, okay, moving on from those though, I think I'm going to give you some recommendations as far as seasons to avoid that are just overall not very good seasons, like boring or disappointing. This may be unpopular, but I'm going to say, unless you're like a diehard who's saying, I want to watch every season of Survivor, you can basically skip everything in the first 10 seasons unless it's like maybe season 1, just because that season is so weird and so different from any other season of Survivor, in that there was no precedent or expectations whatsoever for what was happening, that although it's like almost a completely different show in a lot of ways, it is a really interesting season, and just that like these people, um, you didn't know what to expect at any given point. So season 1 is actually pretty interesting. All Stars, I haven't personally watched it yet. I'm actually building my way up to it because I'm going back to watch all the old seasons. But I've heard All Stars is a phenomenal season. So I'd say in the first 10, really, season 1 and season 8 are the main ones that are worth watching. But just the pace of play is really, really slow in that like a lot of the episodes are spent on things like where are the survivors gonna find water, and it's like um, in the later seasons they just like provide them with a well where that's like totally spelled out. But like in the first couple seasons they were like needing to go to the ocean, bring water in, and boil it themselves and things like that. Whereas now they just get like a well where it's a lot easier for them to find water, sort of thing. Um, let's see here. Other seasons to avoid. I think Redemption Island season 22 with Boston Rob and Russell. Even if you have seen seasons with them and want to watch that one, it's a really boring season. Like by the time you hit the merge, you kind of know what's going to happen, and there's no real surprises whatsoever with like the order of how people get booted off or anything like that. It's very straightforward and not that suspenseful at all. And the finale is one of the most obvious winners ever of the show. I'm not going to say who, but the when you get to the final three, you know without a doubt who's going to win. So from that perspective, you're almost like once you hit the merge, you're actually really bored because you kind of can figure everything that's going to happen up to the final three. Um, season 21 Nicaragua is pretty weird too, and I think I actually kind of like it because of how weird it is, but I think in general people really hate on season 21. It's considered one of the worst seasons ever. I actually really liked the winner a lot and found that person really um, to be a good winner in some ways, but a lot of people consider it a bad season because there's a point where some people quit and it really changes up how the game is played and it really affected the rest of the game, but like people quitting is just really generally pretty lame. And um, yeah, it was kind of the hangover season from Heroes versus Villains, which is awesome. Other seasons to avoid: season 25, or let's see here, season 24, excuse me. Worlds Apart, I think it is, or it's One World. Yeah, it's One World. Again, another season very predictable. I think like by the time the merge hits, you kind of get an idea of who's gonna win pretty quick, and that person does end up winning. And I think it's very spelled out. Like one person is kind of holding all the cards. I feel like for a lot of it, and spoiler alert, they have an advantage throughout the entire game. They get the most confessionals talking to the camera, and they end up winning. So, season 24, yeah, it's one I would probably avoid. Let's see here. Um, I would avoid. Um, those are now that I'm thinking about it, those are really the main ones I would avoid. But yeah, after those, I think the rest are pretty good seasons. So there's then I think I would break it up into like average seasons after that, and then like phenomenal seasons. And so I'll skip the average seasons and kind of just highlight some of my favorites. Kagiyan season 28, one of the best, probably the best cast of all new players there ever was on the show, where everybody was a new player. Everybody brought something interesting and compelling to the show, I thought. Really satisfying season. Along with that, I think Blood versus Water season 29 is really good as well. A pretty good cast of original characters. Let's see here. I think that Gabon is really good. Season 17. It is one of the it's probably the weirdest season of Survivor. Um, the weirdest cast, like just a bunch of oddballs on the cast, and like basically, um, it's very unconventional in that like very unpredictable season, I thought. And the cast is just super goofy, and just like they just found every nut that they could and got them on a season of Survivor. And the setting is really weird. It's not your typical island. It's like in a rainforesty jungle kind of setting, and I don't know. At first, I really didn't like the season actually, but when I got into it more, I thought it was more one of the funny, enjoyable, fun seasons of Survivor, just because of how um, unique and comical the cast is. Other really great seasons. Um, I think if you're just starting off, season 18 is a really good like standard season of Survivor. Like you get kind of like the typical Survivor experience in season 18. Like I'd say it's the most like if you could say one season that represents like what Survivor is, I'd say like season 18. Nothing extremely crazy happens or anything like that. It's just kind of like standard how everything normally goes season 18. But it's like satisfying too. It's not boring. It's interesting and you feel satisfied at the end. Um that's Tocantins, by the way. Season 18 is called Tocantins. Um I like Cook Islands season 13. That's one of my favorites. I think a really satisfying post merge where you have a lot of interesting people, and that season spawned a lot of recurring characters on the show like Parvati, Penner, Ozzy. I'm trying to think of others. Ewell, he was on that season as well. Yeah, that's like one of my favorite seasons. That one of them that really got me into the show a lot. Season 12 is Exile Island. That is kind of like Gabon, a really weird cast of people, but also really entertaining because of how weird they are. So if that's what you're looking for, season 12 is a good one. Um, Season 14, again, another like season with a ton of really weird people, but I really like season 14, which is funny because it's one of the more disliked seasons of the show. It's the first season they filmed in Fiji, actually, so that's a fun fact. And then I guess the last ones I'd recommend would be um, China, in that the cast again is really funny and entertaining. And once you get into the merge, basically everybody left at the merge is like an interesting character. And then season 19. So um, that's Samoa, and that's the introduction to Russell Hantz, who is like arguably the most compelling, interesting contestant on Survivor ever. So season 19 is very, very good watch. So to summarize, seasons that I would suggest or that I enjoyed quite a bit: 12, 13, 14, 15. Um, 16 is really good too, but it's returning players. 17, 18, 19, 20, the best season of Survivor ever, but it's all returning players. And then I would suggest 28 and 29. So there you have it, guys. Those are my suggestions, and I hope you found this useful if you're just trying to get into Survivor, and I'll see you next time. Bye.